Welcome to the Prime Property Finance Podcast with Gareth Morgan and Mark Watts. This unique podcast will dive deep into all areas of property investing finance, going behind the scenes with property professionals, investors and clients. Between us, we have 35 plus years experience in property finance. The podcast has been launched to share knowledge, mindset requirements and experiences of successful investors and professionals. We aim to simplify many of the complicated areas of finance and investing and provide valuable and easy to implement tips. Keep an eye out for our new longer episodes every Tuesday and our shorter ones every Friday. Every January we see the same thing. Investors start the year full of motivation but with no real plan. They chase shiny deals, react to headlines and lurch from one opportunity to the next. The result? Burnout, stalled portfolios and a lot of activity with very little progress. In a market that's still changing, the kind of reactive mindset is expensive. This year doesn't have to be just about guessing or reacting. With the right mindset, clear goals and a joined up strategy, investors can move forward with confidence, even in uncertain markets. In this episode, we're going to talk about how we think the year ahead, how successful investors set meaningful goals and how to turn ambition into a practical strategy that actually stacks up. Let's jump right into it. Mark, Happy New Year. How are you?
Very well. Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you very much. I hope you've had a nice break and are recovered and raring to go into 2026.
Absolutely. 2 weeks off, or a little over 2 weeks actually, which doesn't happen. Well, it's this time of year, isn't it, for us, which you can truly switch off and recuperate. Doesn't happen through the rest of the year.
It doesn't indeed. So yeah, ready to get excited about our goals for 2026, really clear on where they are and what they look like. And obviously we talk a lot with investors and developers and landlords around what it is that their goals are, because they come to us with deals often and they're not that clear around what exactly those goals look like, and they haven't really thought too much about the strategy and various other things. So what we wanted to do today was something a little bit different outside of the sort of standard finance conversation that we have, and really delve a little deeper into three key aspects about being a property investor, because it's not easy at all times and it's a long game. It's a decision that you have to make, that it's a change of lifestyle. You don't become a property investor for Christmas or a dog owner or whatever. So it is a long game. You can't just, drop the house off at the end of the street and hope somebody else will come and take over it for you. I mean, you can pop it at auction, but the reality is, if you're in it for long-term wealth creation, you've got to change, you've got to be ready for that, the ups and downs. You've got to roll with the punches, and you've got to be prepared for the road that lies ahead. So today we wanted to kind of just talk about mindset and how you show up, each and every day into being an investor and how that affects you. We want to talk a little bit about goal setting and having clarity around your goals. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about strategy and how you turn that, all of the above, into action that gets you deals and moves you forward. So yeah, let's dive into it then, really. So in the first instance, let's talk a little bit about mindset and what are the mindsets, the key mindsets that separates investors or good investors, or not necessarily good investors, but investors that go the whole way effectively, from those who stall.
Yeah, I think really interesting topic. Mindset runs across everything that we do, isn't it? So obviously this is from a property perspective. So those looking to get into it, I think it makes most sense to talk around those that are looking to get into property, as opposed to those that are already experienced or looking to go further. They're a long way down the track and have probably gone through the lessons that we'll probably chat around as part of this. So looking at new property investors, landlords, probably see property as a viable route to maintain or generate wealth of some description, whether that be income or future wealth and that sort of thing. It's obviously an asset class of its own. There are other ways you can do it, but property has its uniqueness around leverage and all of these different bits and pieces. So, and there's also that, rightly or wrongly, that perception that landlords are wealthy people, a little bit like the perception that farmers have got loads of cash. In reality, they haven't, and so on and so forth. So I think what we need to have a look at in regards to the mindset is when you start on these, it's exciting. There's a journey. You can picture yourself being the person at the end of the journey that's got these 100 properties and, and living a particular lifestyle or what have you. So people often start this journey with a ton of motivation behind them. And that quickly disappears once you realize that actually there's a lot to do. Certainly in the early days, to get yourself educated, to understand the networks you need to build and generate, the flow of deals, the analysis, the number of people that you need to speak to, the number of no's that you need to go through to find your yes. And that takes a certain type of mindset in an individual in order to make sure that you get through that exercise as best as possible. Many people think I'm going to turn up to the first property, put an offer in, get it accepted, I'm going to make 100 grand, I'm going to recycle that, and I'm going to do 6 properties this year, etc. In reality, that's probably not going to happen. I'm not saying it can't, but it probably won't happen as clear as that. And it's very easy if you're relying on motivation alone to give up. New Year's resolutions in January. How many people don't actually get through January on their New Year's resolution, let alone the rest of the year? So same thing is true with this, really, is you set on the right path. We just need to put things in place to make sure you can continue on that journey and hopefully get yourself to the position you ultimately want to be in.
Yeah, I agree everything you say. So I think for me, it's around the first part of any sort of journey. And if coming into property investing as a new investor, is for me, the very first thing is about mindset. It's about belief. So actually believing and understanding what you can and can't do. And I talk about this, some events that I talk at and things like that. There's the saying from Henry Ford is whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And it just nails it. It's all about mindset and having that positive attitude around, yeah, this can be done. Now, the difficulty with that is it's hard sometimes to believe. People are not very good at visioning the future and believing that can be done. And so when you talk to people, there are plenty of other people in property investing who have done what you want to do. So that's where getting around and speaking to people and learning from other people, that's how they can show you, well, yeah, it can be done. So then you just got to work backwards and go, right, well, if it can be done, I just now need to know and believe that I can do it myself. I remember my first I always wanted to be a property investor and things like that, but I didn't really know until a couple of years into being a mortgage advisor. And I was working with a lot of investors I started going to property investor network meetings and things. And I was recommended 2 books, just happened to be in those meetings. One was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is, if you speak to any property investors, they've probably read that book and one of the main books that changed the direction of their lives. So excellent book around assets and the different types of investment and various things and how a mindset about wealth creation. And the second one then wasn't necessarily a property book, but it was a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And that was more around the compound effect. So there's another book called The Compound Effect by Darrell Hardy. Great books, but that it's actually then taking a long-term view. It's the daily things that you do and how those things impact you over a long term. And when I combined those two together, that had a massive impact on me. And I think I remember sitting at one of those very first meetings and someone saying, they were making £1,000 a month profit from their property portfolio. And I just remember thinking at that time, I hadn't read these books. I was thinking, I'm making £1,000 a month from a property. I thought that was no, that can't be right. And I know people that are making multiple 5 figures and more in net profit, from their property portfolio. So absolutely it can be done. I've seen the bank statements and the accounts to show it. And so when you start on that journey, it's just worry about getting the first deal over the line, because once you've done your first deal, you go through that process, everything becomes a bit easier. Because, and the other analogy I say to people is around swimming. You can have all the theory you like about learning to swim outside of a pool. And so you can be educated until the cows come home around how to be a property investor. But until you dive in the pool and start sinking and actually try and put into practice and learning to swim, that's what I like in property investing to be like. You can talk about it, but until the rush comes from putting those offers in, actually getting the finance, paying for valuation fees, paying for solicitors' fees, parting with money, and then finally getting a set of keys, your first set of keys in your hands. That's the bit that really ingrains the mindset around, right, that's the first step forward. So, but that doesn't come easily. And I think that's the bit that I think a lot of people, especially in this market, there's quite a lot of competition, especially generally new investors start at the lower end of the market, which is sensible, but it's competitive at the lower end of the market as well. And so you might there's a property comes up for sale, it's 70 grand and it's a bargain, and you turn up and there's 20 other people there at the same time. And that's disheartening. So it's having the kind of continuity to go, well, okay, well, I've been and viewed it. A lot of people will just go, I won't bother because somebody else will. But it's the follow-up. It's putting the offer in anyway, whether it gets accepted. So many people just walk away and don't do anything else, put an offer in. And then it becomes a numbers game. You just got to get the viewings. You've got to put the offers in, and you got to follow up. And you just keep doing that. Eventually, you'll get somewhere. But it takes time. And for me, the one word that's, if I could share one word that reflects what you need to be a property investor, that's resilience. And speaking to any of the experienced property investors, because this is, like I said, more aimed at newer investors, any property investor will tell you it takes resilience to keep going and keep working the plan, really. So, yeah.
Talking of the mindset around that, you're not, as you say, you're highly unlikely. I can't say you're not, because there's probably people listening who will say, I've done that. But you're highly unlikely to walk up to your first property, run the analysis, put your offer in, and then it get accepted and it works out to be this perfect deal. I would say they're few and far between is probably a safe assumption on that front. It comes back to, as you say, always offer. Even if it's a ridiculous offer, just always offer. And I think people tend to get in their own way. I don't want to offend someone by putting in a lowball offer. It's a lowball offer. It's an offer that works for you. We've spoken in previous podcasts around value. Value is different to different individuals. Depends how you manage that and what it's worth to you based on what you want to achieve and so on and so forth. So stop being cheeky. It's just the value you place on it. It might be different to the sellers, but that's just a difference of opinion. You're not offending anyone, and they can just say no and you move on to the next one. So, always run the numbers. Yes, there is the education piece around it, but it's that mindset of, I'm not going to offend anyone. The worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no, get out of my own way, and just put my offer in, because you never know, one of those might actually bite, and that might be the deal that gets you really catapulted on this journey and realize, do you know what? It's not as daunting as it may first seem.
And yeah, and 100%. So get out of your own way and follow up. There's so many opportunities that people do and get good opportunities, and they've followed up for 5 or 6 years. It's the longer you're in the game, the more opportunities that'll come your way. So yeah, 100%. The longer you're in it, the more people know what you do, the more opportunities you'll get, and then you'll get better at refining that process. You'll get better at analyzing deals. You'll have more access to finance. Everything gets easier. It's the compound effect of being in the game longer term. Keep going through the process, keep going through it. And there will be times, and I did it myself. I just thought, I'm never going to get a deal. And I was trying to just buy something. I was becoming a motivated buyer then, because I just wanted it. I was desperate to do my first deal. But I took some advice. I had sounding boards. I had mentors that I was working with at the time, and they were just saying, look, don't do it. Don't buy, I'll do one just to break even. No, don't do that. Do a deal that makes sense financially, because they are out there. You just got to go to enough viewings, put enough offers in, and they will come your way. So just sit tight. And I've had plenty of clients who are going down that same route, and it just sit tight, something will come. So yeah.
The other thing that will help as well, and this sounds cliche and you hear it all the time, is understanding your why. Okay, yeah, I know it's the whole Simon Sinek thing. However, we go to start with the end in mind and reverse engineer. How are you going to get there? And we've got an example. I've got an example of that that happened just recently. But before you embark on this journey of trying to achieve an outcome, because ultimately it's just an outcome, is to understand not just what you're trying to achieve, the what can come next. Whatever it is, why are you trying to do it? So are you trying to escape a 9 to 5? Okay, yes, I'm trying to escape the 9 to 5 and I want financial freedom. But what is financial freedom? Why? What is it about your current circumstance that you want to change so greatly? Because once you drill down to the emotion of it, and you can identify as the person that you want to be in 5 years' time, and you can physically imagine and see yourself as that individual, and that now becomes your identity, it will change your behavior, and your decision making will fall in line with what the end goal is meant to be. That will make the tough times not easier, but it will give you the bit that hangs on to, look, I got to remember what I'm trying to achieve here or why I'm doing this. Perhaps you started a family and you just want a better life than that you never had. Whatever it is, that's the bit ultimately that will cling on to, and that will keep you disciplined, because your motivation will disappear and it will come back and it will go again and it will come back and ebb and flow. You just need to have that in your back pocket, really, as a reminder as to, hang on, this is going to be hard work. Why am I doing this? And that's a really, really tough question to answer. If you know, and that's probably a bit of shadow work on yourself as to actually, what am I trying to do here? Is it my ego? Do I just want to be seen as this person who is a successful businessman in property? That's fine. Just own it. Just accept it, own it, and tell people, yeah, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing it for the want of the profile that it could potentially give me with having 100 properties in my area or whatever. So just own what your why is, because that will become so important as you go through the process.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that will also challenge you from a mindset perspective is listening to the news, doom scrolling on social media, because we have to be very mindful, and whether you like it or not, you know, around propaganda, around what's actually happening in the market. I think, you know, where we are with the government and the tax changes, you know, everyone's getting taxed more and more. Millionaires are leaving the UK. You know, it's all doomsday and the world's going to end and this, that, and the other. And I think that's fine, but that a lot of that stuff's out of our control. What we can control is the actions that we do on a day-to-day basis. And if you let that, you know, that can paralyze you if you listen to it, and it'll just stop you in your tracks, and that will mess with your mindset. And so it'll stop you from taking action. So analysis by paralysis, paralysis by analysis is another one, which is very similar, where you can overthink things to the nth degree, which means then you just don't take any action because you're analyzing all the time. And so the two things there really is over-analysis. Sometimes you just got to get up and, you know, take a punt a little bit and have a go, but also don't listen to the market, the news, avoid it at all costs, because it does impact you, whether you think it does or not. It does. It'll slowly gnaw away inside you. So keep your news and the information that you're getting in, keep it positive and from sources outside of the mainstream media.
I totally agree. I think something just to pick up on the negative news side of things. Absolutely. Just focus on the facts. So there in the news is still stuff about inflation, the interest rates and various different things. That is clearly important information for when you're making any investment decision, whether that be property or any other thing on that front. I guess the point here is not to get drawn into the whole rhetoric of doom and gloom, negative. That can really sap your energy when you're trying to remain positive. And people, it makes me laugh when you look at when I was younger growing up. I won't tell you my age, but it was a while back when you were looking at the weather forecast in the summer. The map was there with the sun with a smiley face on it, showing 30 degrees, 35 degrees, and how hot it was going to be. Now you look at the weather forecast today, the map is red, everything's on fire, it's like hell on earth. You know, you got a heat wave with risk of life and everything. We couldn't wait for it to be 35 degrees back then. So it just goes to show how things can get distorted to be on that front. So just try not to get drawn into that, I guess, is the point, really.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, hopefully we've clarified how important it is. So from a mindset perspective, it's a long game. 100%. You've got to take a long-term view. It's not get rich quick. You will have challenging times, and it's being clear on, why are you doing this, and keeping that motivation high. The why will keep your motivation high. So when you don't have good days, because inevitably you'll have more bad days than you'll have good days, because out of the 100 offers you put in, 95 of them probably will get rejected. And then of the 5 that get accepted, 3 will fall through for various reasons, and you buy 2 properties. So that's the reality. It is a numbers game. And so you'll hear no a lot more than you'll hear yes. And it's just being used to that and staying positive. So moving on then, onto sort of goal setting. And so when you're clear on, you're positive and you've got a good mindset and you come in at it enthusiastically on a day by day basis, keep banging the drum, then it starts being right. Well, being clear on where you're going is a lot more important then, because that will guide those day-to-day actions on exactly what you're doing. Now, one of the things that we see all the time is arbitrary, vague goals. So something like, I want to buy more property this year. That's great. Buy more property. So more properties, one more property than what you had last year, or 20 more properties, which is it? Vastly different in terms of the work involved and everything about it. And then the other one, which I hear all the time, is, these arbitrary figures. I want to buy 10 properties by the time I'm 30, or I want 10 grand a month in income. Okay, 10 grand a month in income, is that 10 grand a month in rent, or is that 10 grand a month in post-tax net income? Again, 2 very different things, and so even when you look at net income or cash flow, net income, people just take the rent and take away the mortgage, and that's what's left behind. They don't actually break down the net after all costs and expenses, and that's before tax. So there's a long way before it becomes net income. And so it's just being clear on exactly what it is and shifting that, shifting the goal setting to being a lot more outcome based rather than, arbitrary figures, like we said. So, the key drivers around property is, what are those outcome based goals? Do you want more cash flow? Do you want, are you doing flips or developments? Do you want more profit? And how much profit do you make? Have you got a specific return on cash that you need to make? Have you got a specific portfolio value that you want to reach because you're going to be in a capital growth area and you know what the capital growth is going to be over that time? Or is it about reducing risk? Some people are quite highly leveraged in the early years, and their goal is to reduce their loan to value across their portfolio, or to go from HMOs with students to HMOs on leases, those types of things, reducing risk of voids and maintenance and things like that. Or it might be like a lifestyle-based goal where, you want to quit your job, in which case, you need to meet certain metrics because you need to replace your income. You might want to give X amount of money to charity. You might want to build a school. You might, there's so many different variables. So it's being really clear. And we talk about sort of smart goals and smart objectives, and it's how you break down exactly what it is you want into those goals to make it really clear. Because once you've got those goals, you can then break those down into actions that you carry out on a day-to-day basis to get to your end result.
Yeah, no, that's a point well made. So I think, there's a conversation myself and my other half had over the Christmas period. We sit down and we'll review, put a plan in place for the next 5 years, and then we'll break that down per annum as to where we want to get to. So it's just so that we've got a line of sight. So we just don't end up coasting or meandering through life and then looking back and going, we've wasted 10 years of our life, we should have done this, etc. So, and it was a really interesting conversation, actually. So my other half, she's a CFO, a chief financial officer of quite a large firm, so very financially literate. And the conversation went something like, right, we need to be earning this figure out of property in the next 5 years. So it was a reasonably large figure. It was over 6 figures on a net basis per annum. And I told you I should have bought that property from my friend, £120,000. It was an LHA, so it had local housing authority in there, and it made money. And I was like, right, let me just explain this to you now. You want to make a over 6-figure income figure over 5 years, within 5 years. Of the money, you would have had to put 30 grand, let's say, of a deposit into the 120 purchase, plus stamp duty, plus legals. That would have been 35, 40,000 in total. And it would have netted you about 350 a month in that. So of the pot of money, nearly half of it will be gone, and you've got £400 a month. So we now need to work for another year to replace that money, to go again, and so on. So can you see now, as that is simply not going to get us there. So on that basis, that made the decision that no, you should never have bought it, because it didn't fit in line with what the ultimate goal was going to be. And we'll come on to strategies in due course. But what that meant was, no, that should never have been on the table to buy, because it would never have got us to where we wanted to be in the time frame that we've set ourselves. And that is the power of looking into the 5 years and setting yourself a goal and ambition. We can instantly now in future swap those aside and go, no, we don't want to be looking at those. When we're doing our research on properties, that is not even anywhere near our criteria that we need to set ourselves.
So it's quite a good example, because I wasn't aware of that conversation. So I've just done quick figures. So to help people understand this. So if you wanted to, and how to work those goals backwards. So let's say you want to earn 100 grand a year net from your property income, then over the next 5 years, and the property's making, a straight buy to let is making £350 a month net. That's 23, called 24, closer to 24 properties that you need over the next 5 years. So, and then over each year, you're buying 5 properties a year. Okay. Is that realistic? You're both busy people. Is it realistic that you are able to buy 5 properties a year for the next 5 years? And it probably is. I mean, if there's simple buy-to-lets, and this is where you have to keep having this conversation. So if you've got a substantial pot of money in the bank, and you can just put the deposits down on those examples. So you said there was about, let's call it 40,000, keep the math simple. So if you had 200 grand in the bank, and you could just put down 5 lots of 40k and you buy the 5 houses, that is probably doable, but you need to do the same thing for the next 5 years. So if you've got £1 million in the bank, then that is a relatively straightforward. Or if you can put and save and put that. The reality is, for most people, they can't do that. And so you then have to think about, right, well, if you may have a pot of 200,000, but what you need to do is recycle your cash, because you need that money out next year. So is it reality to be able to do BRRs, buy, refurbish, refinance, 5 properties a year with 200,000 and keep that cycle going? Now, that's a lot more challenging, because there's work involved in managing refurbs, managing teams. You've got to really be on it, because we know the life cycle of a refinance, but from a purchase into a buying the property, renovating it, getting it filled, refinancing it is pretty much 9 to 12 months. You can do it in 6 months, yes, but the way everything takes, with solicitors and applications and everything else, to get the best value out of it, you want to leave it on there for a certain amount of time. So the reality is that if you're both busy professionals and you don't have much time to put into it, then that's going to be more challenging. So that's just a little bit of an example of how you have to go, right, well, what's the end goal, and work it backwards, and start with the end in mind and work backwards and go, okay, well, in that case, maybe that's not a reality. But could we find a property that makes, so our criteria now is we need to find properties that net £1,000 a month. And so we have to do less deals, for it, rather than 350, you get in one property that makes £1,000, you could do BRRs then, and all of a sudden there's less work involved, but you've just increased the cash flow. And so it's just trying to understand where that fits into the model and the goals, really. And this is a little bit we're talking a bit of strategy here around the goal setting as well. But it's being, like you said, really clear on what you want to achieve, and then breaking it down.
And I think the main point with all of this was the goal is this, but the way you were going to do it was never going to get you to there without, as you say, in that method, that's more of a store of wealth as opposed to a wealth generation, if that makes sense. So, if you had £1 million, yeah, absolutely, you can drop that into properties to generate a revenue, et cetera, but it isn't. You're trying to create the wealth whilst you're going through this exercise. So, and it just shone a light on, actually, this is somebody who is extremely financially aware, given what she does for a living, given the way she operates our household expenses as well. Honestly, she's got a ledger for it. But that's great. But still missed the point. It's like, yeah, we'll just do this. And actually, it's not quite that. It's not quite that straightforward. And I share that example because it's such an easy thing to fall into and go, oh, we'll just do this and we'll do. And before you know it, we're 5 properties in, no more cash left, and you've got $2,500 a month coming in. And you're going, well, okay, we're stuck now and we have to think of a different way of doing it. Whereas the idea is that we are more aware as to that's going to create a bottleneck for us. So we have to think ever so slightly. Doesn't mean we'll ignore everything that's out there, but we'll just have to think a bit differently because what we said we're going to do isn't going to get us to where we ultimately want to be.
Yeah, I agree. And then, so the other thing to bear in mind is, your short-term goals versus your long-term goals. And again, this goes back starting with the end in mind. And there's another saying that I forget the exact wordings, but it's we underestimate what we can achieve in 5 years and overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year. And so by starting with that end one back and working backwards, we go, right, this is my 5-year goal. This is my 3-year goal. This is my 1-year goal. Okay, right. Then what do I need? And then you break that down into quarterlies and then monthlies. And then that breaks down into your weekly and daily actions. So you go, right, if I'm going to have to buy 5 properties this year, then I need to be buying almost, well, more than 1 a quarter, isn't it? So you go, right, almost 1 every other month. And so you've got to be on that cadence, right? What are you doing today? Well, if I need to be buying 1 property in the next 2 months, I need to be viewing, right? How many viewings do I need to make? What's the conversion rate? And, if you've been doing this a little bit, then you can review the last 12 months and go, well, all right, how many properties did I view? Look at your diary, look at your emails, look at how many you've actually viewed and how many offers you put in and how many of those got accepted, and then kind of work a plan on that. If you don't know, then maybe speaking to other investors and seeing what they are doing to get an idea on numbers, or you just got to build that out. But ultimately, you just got to hammer the viewings and the offers until you do get one accepted and start planning that out. So, yeah, and I think just having real clear goals and spending the time, smart objectives. I'm sure most people know what those are, but having them, look up smart objectives, specific, measurable. Are they achievable? Time bound. So, as long as you hit all of these metrics, which are action metrics, not outcome based, then sort of, what is the action I need to get the outcome I want? And so really clear and not fluffy at all, you can get there.
The beauty of doing it this way, and it links back to the mindset piece as well, if you think about running a marathon, it's 26 point whatever miles, that's just a huge mammoth task. However, it's just 1 foot in front of the other for 4 hours, and you just concentrate on putting the next step and the next step and the next step. The beauty of taking your plan and bringing it down and making it granular is it's quite a daunting thing. If you don't own any property to then go, I want 5 by the end of the year, it's like, well, how do we even start doing that? And you start dissecting that down further and further. Then you look at your activity, as you say. So have I looked, reviewed and found 5 properties this week and arranged a viewing? So that becomes quite granular then. And you can look back and go, well, have I seen 5 this last 10 days or what have you? And do that on a piece. It's far easier and less daunting to look at 1 property than think I've got to look at 100. And you just check them off. And eventually 6 months into this exercise, you look back and you go, God, we've done 50 viewings and we've had 1 offer accepted. And you look back and you go, well, actually, we've actually done a lot. But had you have thought of it that way, the challenge itself, it's how do you eat an elephant? Is it 1 bite at a time type thing? And that sort of thing. So breaking it down into simple, basic tasks, which are super easy to do, has the compound impact of building the ultimate goal at the end.
Yeah, and I think if we let's dive and move on to strategy a little bit, because I think this will feed back. If we just cover strategy a little bit, we'll feed back around those goals and how that turn those goals into action. And this is where you need to be crystal clear on strategy before you get started. So if we take the example of that we just used, let's say you want £100,000 a year income and your strategy is buy to let. And so you're just going to be going, I just want to focus on single buy to lets. what people spend a lot of time on Rightmove and Zoopla and everything else, just doom scrolling through areas with a 40-mile radius, looking at all property types. I think, whereas if you can become really strategic and go, right, I want 2 or 3 bed mid-terraced houses, which with a maximum purchase price of this, no minimum, I guess, depending on this condition. These are my ideal property type in this location with, your gold mine area. Then it becomes, you become laser focused, and it becomes a lot easier to, from a strategy perspective, to know how to turn those goals into actions by saying, right, when I go on Rightmove, I'm filtering right to the beginning. I'm filtering location. I'm filtering property types. So you're removing as much noise as possible. So all of a sudden you've gone from 300 properties down to 20 properties. And then you're assessing those 20, and then you're probably wanting to be booking viewings on those 20, especially if you're new to the area, because you want to be viewing those and getting to understand your property, your location, your area, the property types as well as you can, so that when you do get one that comes up as good value, you can go bang, I'm having that. And knowing your area inside out will bring that confidence to make those offers as well.
Yeah, so just cutting out the noise, being a little bit blinkered in your approach. Also, that helps with things, distractions or new shiny penny. Oh, look at this. It's a semi-commercial property over here. I could do this with it. Oh, I got this commercial unit that I can convert it. No, as much as we say, stay in your lane for now, stay laser focused in that. There's nothing stopping you later on changing your strategy to something else and then redefining the criteria. But you set your stall out, you've gone, yes, this is what we're looking for, X, Y, and Z. And once you've got that in play, then you can start to have a look around. This shiny penny syndrome is murder.
I'm laughing at myself here as I've just recalled a conversation that I had with a good old friend of mine. We helped him out, and he rang me for some advice. He's seen the deal and had a 20-minute conversation with him. And I think he mentioned about 6 different strategies in that conversation. I hadn't said anything. I said, right, let's slow down now. What is it that you're doing? You've just mentioned flips, multi-unit blocks, BRRs. There's all these different HMOs, long-term leases. He was just going on. And I said, right, what do you want? What do you want? Because if you buy a property to flip and you buy a property to keep and refurbish and refinance, those are, in their own right, they're 2 very different strategies, because you probably do a different product to flip than you would to keep for a longer term. And that's different to buying blocks of flats. I said, right, the problem you've got is you've got this shiny penny, you're trying to cover all, and he was getting educated, he's watching YouTube and various things. The problem is you have to choose one core strategy. What is it that you do? And then that becomes really easy. For me, I like blocks of flats, multi-unit blocks, or semi-commercial, or commercial with flats above. That's my investment strategy. So I know when I'm looking for properties, it's much easier for me to find those. And then I know exactly what works for me. I know the location, I know what rents I can get. I know what, all of those things. So for me, it's really easy. Just if something comes across my desk that isn't a block of flats or semi-commercial, it's much easier for me to make a decision on whether I want to buy it or not. I can just bat it away and go, it's not for me, move on. So I don't use up a load of energy to looking at things that don't necessarily fit my criteria. And so that's what we encourage people to do, is just choose something. If you're, a newer investor, you might want to concentrate on sort of straightforward buy to let to begin with, because the other thing is people try and skip the gears. So they might come in and I want to be an investor, I want to do a 10-bed HMO, right? What experience have you got? I haven't got any. And then that becomes a problem, because it's a lot more difficult to finance, as we know. So, and semi-commercial and commercial property is more difficult. I want to do a 10 house development. Have you done any development before? No. Right. Okay. What experience have you got? None. Right. Very different to, I'm a builder. I've been building houses for other people for 30 years. These are the properties that I've managed. I've taken them from this to this, right? I've got a team of boys. Right. There's a potential that you've got a chance of doing a 10 house development for your first deal, because you've got a real track record of developing, but it's still going to be difficult to make sure that, the lender is going to be happy with you doing that. as long as you've got the other pieces to the puzzle. So, but that's a much easier sell than someone who's got no experience in development. So choosing, in investing, you've got three things generally that people lack. One is time, one is money, and one is experience. And so if you've got all three, then you don't need anybody else or anything. If you've got money, time, and experience, you just crack on and do your own stuff with your own cash. But what we tend to find is some people have got none of those, which is also a challenge. But you can do that over time. You can get experience. You might find, you can find time and you can find money as well. So normally people have got one or two of those. And so if you've got a lot of time and a lot of experience, but you haven't got money, then you can work with someone who's got money and hasn't got time or experience and put those together. You might have a lot of money, you might have a lot of experience, but you just haven't got any time based on, your job or whatever it is. So it's just kind of figuring out and auditing where you are in your life and what you're trying to do and what you can put into, like I said, someone who's works in the city and earns multiple six figures can probably just take salary bonus and just invest and just do that on the side and maybe just get someone to help them to buy properties off the shelf. But very different to somebody who's trying to create wealth and through activity, which is effectively a job, isn't it? I'm trying to create, I'm putting time and effort into refurbing properties, adding value in whichever way the thing. So what's your skill set? What experience have you got? And then matching those experiences to your investment strategy.
Yeah, and also we see this quite a lot where people will come to us and go, I want to do holiday lets or short-term lets actually, as opposed to holiday lets, short-term lets. I want to do HMOs. Yes, they are higher yielding investment strategies, but it comes back to, are you aware or are you prepared for the work that comes with it? They're higher yielding for a reason. There's a skill in knitting together people in a HMO. There is an operating side to a short-term let. There's turnover of properties or turnover of guests, I should say, as opposed to properties, and so on. So again, not running to the nearest strategy that sounds like it's going to get you to where it is. You've got to, back to the SMART objective. It's got to be realistic. What can you actually deliver? Now, the pushback we get is it's going to be managed by an agent. And I get that. That's great. But what happens if that agent underperforms and the property isn't delivering the numbers you think you can get and so on? All of these things need to be brought into consideration. So if you're new into property, I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever consider short-term let, a HMO or anything like that. But just be realistic as to what you can and can't deliver, because the more unrealistic you make it, the less likely you are to hit it. Now, there is this whole thing which is shoot for the stars and you'll hit the moon type thing and set your goals big, your goals bigger than that. And I get all that. That is enthusiasm. That's really trying to push yourself out there and so on. But we have to deal with the real elements of life as well. And can you actually, as you say, do you have the time? Do you have the resources to actually do what you think you're going to do in that period? So just to inject a touch of realism into it. Nothing wrong with big objectives, but also make them to a point where you can break them down into daily activity and actually deliver against what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else from a strategy perspective that you think that we've, ultimately, there's a lot of people out there with experience, and you just have to build, like you said, spend time reviewing where you are in your life and use other people for motivation, but don't use them, if you try and copy people that are in a different place with different skill set, different experience, it's not going to help you. And so, yes, use them for motivation, but don't do it for comparison, because you'll just lose yourself and that will stunt your motivation. Just build a plan that works for you and your setup and just work the plan. Ultimately, it's hard work that gets you somewhere. And that's one of the things that we kind of see then is you have to be, when you've got a clear plan, it's easy to, confuse being busy, active with actual progress. And you need to map out, what does progress look like? Well, by June, I will have bought one property. That is progress. So if you've done if you're busy doing things around property, I'm doing this and that, but you haven't bought anything, maybe you're not busy in the right areas, or you're not actually as busy as you say you are doing those things. So And then it's just having someone to hold you accountable. If you can find someone to work with you and hold some accountability, that makes life a lot easier as well, because you're more likely to get it done.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talk about as well is, in order to make these things more achievable, often you have to take things away rather than add things. So don't add to your routine, take things away from it. So I use the analogy of a gym. This is probably the easiest one I can use. In the mornings, to go to the gym before work, 7 o'clock in the morning when the rain's lashing it down sideways because of the wind and it's grim out there, bedroom's cold, all of that stuff. My gym bag is by the side, literally by the side of the bed. My clothes are ready to put on straight away. It's get up, make a call. It's the same routine. I don't then have to go worrying about what am I doing for the next day. So you're just taking stuff out of the equation so that it just is no longer a barrier. So look in your life what you can take away as much as what you can add in to make this as doable as possible. And that also comes into your network as well. So removing naysayers. So those people that are saying you can't do this or you must be ridiculous and so on, I'm not saying completely remove them or whatever, but you perhaps want to distance yourself from them conversations and find people within your network, and we spoke about networking before, who actually say yes and want to encourage you. People who have trodden the path that you've already or want to go down are the ones that will say, yeah, it's absolutely possible. It's the ones who haven't done it before and don't know how to do it will tell you, oh, that's impossible, you're ridiculous, stop it, these pipe dreams or whatever. So I think your network is going to be key towards it. So get out, network within property meetings, speak to other entrepreneurs. It doesn't have to always be about property, because they would have gone through similar challenges to build their empires, if you like, as to what that is. So you want to mix with the people who are prepared to go for big goals, big ambitions. Those are the ones that will probably pull you through as well when you need a bit of additional motivation. Somebody just to tell you, come on, get on with it. It was hard for us all. Stop sulking, off you pop type things, So surround yourself with good quality people as well. That will make the journey significantly easier.
Awesome. So in terms of some of the mistakes to kind of avoid, I think we've just mentioned one around confusing activity with progress. So that's setting too ambitious of goals. Like we said, again, be realistic around them and spend that time. I think from a finance perspective, one thing we see is people empty the bank a lot. They'll do deals and then they'll leave no cash buffer. So that's probably, from a finance perspective, one thing that we would encourage you to be mindful of. Things do cost more, they do take longer to overrun, and property investing is a cash intensive game. So you do need a cash buffer around you. So always try and keep some cash around, and then also just making sure that you consider all the risks and do enough due diligence to really make sure you're not buying a lemon, as we call it in the industry, but also not paralyzing yourself and not doing deals because you're trying to do too much due diligence when you just need to get on and do a deal. So find balance, and that's something that will come with time. And you have to take some risks ultimately.
Yeah, and that's it. It's understanding. So as we've gone through the strategy piece, and again, listeners can listen to previous podcasts where we cover off multiple different types of strategies. They come with different risk profiles. So if you're very low risk, then bear in mind you're probably not going to get yourself to the big numbers in 5 years. It's going to be slow and steady wins the race, and perhaps it's not a 5-year objective, it's a 30-year objective. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's ultimately, this is a very personal thing that you need to do. Just because somebody else has built a £10 million portfolio in 5 years doesn't mean that you have to go and do the same. It's what works for you. Right? Do your own journey, your own path, and map out your own plan from that perspective. Don't compare yourself necessarily to someone else who's done something different. That can really kill your motivation as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. I think there's plenty in there for people to pull apart. And we encourage you to go ahead, and do deals, because there's deals out there to be done. But as always, we wanted to invest with clarity, with confidence and credibility. And we can help you with parts of that. And hopefully this has been helpful to go ahead and smash your goals for the year ahead. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks again for listening. Really appreciate it. So if there's one message to take from today, it's this. Success this year won't come from predicting the market, it'll come from preparing properly. The investors who win aren't the ones with the boldest predictions, but the ones with the clearest goals, the right mindset, and the strategy that fits them. If you're heading into the year with ambition but want clarity around finance, structure, and next steps, then speak to us at Prime Property Finance, and we'll help investors turn goal into workable strategies, not just ideas on paper. Thanks for listening, and here's to a focused, confident, and successful year ahead. Wishing you all the best. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope you have learned something and have some tips to take away. We'd be very grateful if you enjoyed the show. You could give us a review and share with anyone that you know that may be interested. And of course, subscribe to the show so you can get notified when a new episode is released. If you'd like us to answer any questions or go deeper on a specific topic, please drop us a message at primeproperty.finance. See you on the next episode.